Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello and welcome to Movies VS Capitalism, an anti-capitalist movie podcast. This is Frank.
And this is Rivka.
And I was going to say happy birthday, happy anniversary, but that's not what this is. Happy 100 episodes to you, Rivka.
Happy 100 episodes to you, Frank, and to
Thank
everyone
you.
Listening. To those really dedicated who listen to all 100.
If you have, I mean, there's probably very few of you out there, but you're the real one, so thank you. We do put out a lot of episodes. It's a lot of movies to watch, as we have discovered.
Movies to watch.
Yeah, this is... Who'da thunk it? This is our 100th episode of this podcast, including our bonus Patreon episodes, which you can subscribe to for just $5 a month. But yeah, I did an accounting of our episodes a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh shit, we're coming up on 100. We have to do something for it. So we're just going to chat a little bit here up top of what 100 eps of MVC has meant to us. How are you feeling, Rivka? I feel like you're at a completely different place than we were when we started this podcast.
Yeah, pregnant. Yeah, no, I mean, man, it flew by.
Really did.
It really flew by, and I think I'm just like just thinking through all of it. It's a joy that it flew by, and there's so much to like. I think it's just amazing how generative all of these conversations are, how like the original thesis you kind of like put forward to me when you first pitched this podcast really has this longevity, and you know, there's just been eternally things to pull apart in, you know, some of our like most fun ridiculous episodes to very serious episodes. So I just like, yeah, I'm excited to keep doing it. It's been great to build having John come join our team. So those are like, I'm just feeling really grateful and excited about it. How about you?
I'm feeling really wonderful about it. You know, we'll give a little inside track to our listeners. Maybe a few months ago, 3, 4, 5 months ago, Rivka and I were chatting, and we were both like getting to this place. I think you had just found out that you were pregnant. My back was injured. There was just like a lot of stuff going on work and life-wise, and we were starting to have the conversations of like, yo, do we wrap this thing up soon? This is starting to become a lot to do. It's a cumbersome production. And now that John is here, shout out to John, part of the MVC family now, I feel really reinvigorated on this project, and just like not having to do that extra like however many hours of labor a week, and getting to focus on the other parts of making this podcast that we really enjoy has really re-sparked my passion, and what we brought to this when we were first starting, which was just like an excitement to talk about film from this vantage point through this lens. So now I feel like I have the perspective to really be just so grateful and so appreciative and very proud of the work that we have done over the last 2-ish years or so. It's just been a little over 2 years. Yeah. And I mean, it's like just thinking about it, talking about like, you know, we can glow ourselves up for a second here. You know, we've been nominated and won multiple awards. Crazy. You know, we have had on guests, and obviously we love all of our guests equally. But, you know, we've had on guests such as, you know, Nina Turner and Adam McKay and Boots Riley and Patricia Resnick, the screenwriter of 9 to 5. Like, we've gotten to have some, and then obviously, and fame, it's not all about fame, that we're not we're not lifting up fame above all else, but just like all the other people we've gotten to meet and build community with throughout this process. Obviously, Harvey K has become truly one of my closest friends.
Yeah, family.
I love Harvey. I love you a lot. We love you a lot.
My first text in the morning.
Trading your Wordle scores.
Yep.
And that's all. And there's like so many other people I can name who I'm now like close with on texting basis with from doing this show. It's a real joy, and it's a real, I didn't think we would get this much out of it, and I'm so grateful that we have, because it's added a lot to my life.
Same. I mean, yeah, you said it all. And I think moving forward, I'm curious, like, do you have any, just as we're expanding and moving past 100, like, are there things that you're excited to explore further? Like, I've been thinking about it, and like, we ask this question at the end all the time. Like, we do our awards that are always, kind of fun and silly, but I still think it's so great how, like, every time we ask about best politics, worst politics, like, it's always a new discovery of, like, what does it even mean to have good or bad politics? And just, like, opening, I guess, that as an open question to our audience as they think about it. Like, I discover something new all the time, because I think, like, obviously when you're giving an award, you have to have something as drastic as best worst.
Yeah.
But, like, that's, I think,
lacks a lot of nuance.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of the conversations is just to continually discover, like, what does it mean to be a political creature, particularly like a mortal human being with all our complexities and nuances in 2025. So I think, and using, obviously, storytelling and film filled with all of these stereotypes and archetypes and then amazing ways of breaking them. I just think I'm excited to keep diving into that question for myself of, like, what does it mean to have politics? Like, what do we even mean by that question?
Yeah. How does it actually translate into your life and into your work, and what aspects of your perspective, worldview, daily practices, the way you treat people are part of your politics? I think that's a really good, when we say, like, everything is political, which I still align with very much, like, just continuing to unpack what that means. And I think for myself as, like, a writer, that's something I'm unpacking too, as I'm, like, kind of moving on to new projects to write, and thinking about how so much of writing is tracking behavior, really, like, what characters do. Oh, yeah.
Like, not even so much like what they say, but just like what we as human beings do or don't do, and how, and the political implications that are there, whether or not you know they're, whether or not you're aware, like, which is so amazing. Human beings do things all the time that they're like, I don't know, I'm fucking doing that, but it still has a political impact. I think it was Kieran Culkin. Is that right? It's early, y'all. Kieran Culkin. There was like a fun little acting clip of him that, like, Tommy teaches acting, so whenever those come, I'm like, always send them over.
Yeah. Doing like an actors on actors thing, or like a panel,
it was like
or something.
Some clip, but I thought it was really good, where he was talking about an experience with a director who, like, he was a kid, he was like a teen, and the director was trying to get them to, like, just walk through the woods and do, like, teenage stuff, and he was like, yeah, we were trying to be like real actors, and be like, but why are we doing this? And the director got really frustrated and was just like, because you're fucking 15. And then Kieran was like, oh yeah, actually, wait, that makes a lot of sense. Like, sometimes you just do shit because you do it, which I thought was great as an actor and a writer, to be like, yeah, people don't always know why they're doing what they do, but that doesn't always mean it. But that doesn't mean, like, it doesn't have a political impact. So I'm excited to continue, I guess, exploring this idea of everything is political. What does that mean when we're watching film?
I love that. And in hearing you say that, something that I've really gotten loud out of is our top of show A block conversations that we have, where, and I know some people aren't crazy about them. Sometimes we get comments in, the Apple reviews that are like, I just came here to listen to a conversation about Ghostbusters, and then y'all started talking about the SAG strike or something. But I have learned a lot.
You can fast forward, y'all.
It's, Mark
Maron's
Maron's been doing it for years. He always talks for 10 minutes. You just skip right ahead to the interview. It's not that hard. But it has been a great exercise in sort of dating where we are and what's happening in the world in a given episode, since, a movie conversation is mostly evergreen. And two, it has given us a chance to bring the type of analysis we're trying to do, perspective, to real events in the world, and specifically ones like we try to frame most of those conversations around stuff that's happening in the arts or in entertainment or in media or, you know, pop culture writ large. And that has definitely helped me start to pick up on patterns and trends and things that I am seeing out in the world more often, and especially in the world of entertainment, which is a world that you and I have both worked in and have a lot of love and, you know, complicated feelings towards. So it's just been it's just been an incredible learning experience, and has challenged me to reconsider my own biases and notions. And honestly, Riv, I thank you there you challenged me a lot too. And there have been so many times in this show where I've said something and you've been like, let's actually hang on a second. And I'm like, you know what? You're fucking right about that. Absolutely. So
ditto, yeah.
Yeah. So it's I'm so grateful for you and that you wanted to do this project with me when I asked you. And yeah, I didn't think we'd be here 100 episodes later, having done all we have, and I'm so proud and so grateful. So
Same.
Thank you.
The very last thing I'll say is also just like, I think I didn't know what to expect, but like doing this for the first time, I didn't expect like how incredible it would be to develop this relationship with all of you who are listening, and the audience members particularly who write in and share this dialogue and write on our Patreon page and write us emails and put things also and just reflect back your thoughts, you know, about what we're sharing, share movies that you want covered, share ideas for guests, just like, yeah, the way this podcast is impacting you. And it's just, I think that's become also something that was like an unbelievable gift. I didn't anticipate that. And I think that just continues to be more fulfilling than so much other shit that I think, you know.
Truly. Yeah.
It's so much better than just like, I mean, we like a like on Instagram, but to like hear someone's thoughts on the politics of a film or like revelations, or make us, but you know, oftentimes reflect back something we've said and put it in a new perspective is pretty cool. So
fucking cool. So thank you to everyone who listens, to everyone who writes in and engages. It really fills my cup at times, for sure.
Yes.
There have definitely been moments where I've been like, I feel shitty, and then I see a nice email or a nice comment or something, and I'm like, oh damn, that's right, community, we're doing it. So thank you.
So we have a very special 100th episode up for you.
Oh my god, that's right. Yeah. I completely forgot what the actual movie conversation was. Yes, a very special 100th episode. So if you've listened to the show for a while, you know that my father, Tom Cappello, is a recurring character on this show. We've talked about him at length. My dad was a restaurant owner and operator for over 40 years. I got it wrong in the bio, you'll hear it, but it is over 40 years. And we wanted to have him on the show because he is a unique voice. And we had a really lovely conversation about one of his favorite movies, and a truly wonderful movie that everyone should. If you've not seen Big Night, I recommend going to watch it. It's a really wonderful movie. So we wanted to just do something fun and special for this 100th episode. So we're going to get to that conversation shortly. But before we do, real quickly, we just want to remind our audience that we don't sell ads on this show. We rely on you, the community, to support the production of the show. So if you'd like to do that, you can subscribe to our Patreon account.
That's right. For just $5 a month, you get access to new bonus episodes, our entire back catalog, and our Patreon link is in the episode description in your podcast player or at mvcpod.com. Also, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast on your podcast player so you don't miss new episodes.
And also a reminder that we donate our ad space. So if you're part of a leftist or progressive organization and you'd like to run an ad with us, you can email us at moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with our special guest, Tom Cappello, talking about Big Night.
Hey everyone, it's Frank here. So after the devastating wildfires in Los Angeles, Rivka and I just wanted to take a moment in this mid-roll spot to direct you to some online resources if you would like to contribute to the relief effort. Honestly, there are so many different organizations doing incredible grassroots organizing on the ground. It would be impossible to name all of them, but the Mutual Aid Los Angeles Network has done an incredible job of putting together a massive list of all of the different places where you can help out. And you can find that list by going to mutualaidla.org. That's mutualaidla.org. They have a bunch of different opportunities from donating to volunteering. If you're able to help out in any way, this is going to be a long recovery for the people affected by these fires in LA. All right, everyone, stay safe. And now back to the show. Today, we are joined for our 100th episode by my father, Tom Cappello. Tom, I'm going to do your bio just off the dome. Yeah. So my father was born in Brooklyn, New York. He went to Xaverian High School and then attended Fordham College. Then Fordham University. My bad. My mistake. Fordham University. And then, was an owner and operator of restaurants for over 30 years. 40 years. 40 years. Fuck. I should have written this down. I should have checked with you beforehand.
This is great. This is better.
If I would have stopped at 30, I couldn't pay for college.
Yep, and we appreciate that, me and my siblings. And yes, he is my father, and I love him very much, and I'm very glad that he's here. Dad, how are you doing today?
Good, very good. Went to the dentist, put a crown in.
Oh, today, earlier.
Yeah.
Wow, big day.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, we are so excited to have you. And by we, I mean, I'm so excited to have you. I know Frank's so excited to have you on the podcast, but also we've already gotten listeners who wrote in about how excited they are to have you as our guest, because you've like given us questions that we've answered live on mic, and you know, your character on the show. We talk about you a lot, so we're
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, I do impressions of you sometimes, you know. Our dear friend Harvey, very excited to hear this episode. So you've got a lot of expectation, so don't mess it up.
Okay.
Dad, before we get into the movie conversation, I mean, tell us a little bit about running a restaurant. Tell us about what got you. I mean, I know I've heard these stories before, but just for the listeners, what inspired you to get into the restaurant business?
Well, it's a kind of a backwards long story. When I was in school, from high school through college, I was working in a produce market around the corner from my house in Bensonhurst. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, I started out as a delivery guy, riding a bike in snow, sleet, and rain and hot days. And after the second year, I wanted to get in the store, to work in the store. You know, packing fruit, making displays, waiting on customers, adding them up, ringing them up, taking their money, stuff like that. And my boss told me, you got to find somebody to replace you. I said, what? He said, yeah, I can't give you up. What am I going to get for delivery guy? That's your job. So I convinced my friend Claude. He was a couple of years younger than me. You know, I talked it up to him, and he came on board, and I got in the store. And then I really enjoyed it. Then when I got in college, a friend of his was a big wholesaler in Brooklyn. It had a lot of accounts, stores that he used to deliver to and buy produce for. He was a wholesaler, and every once in a while he would need help in other stores that they were shorthanded. And he would call up my boss and he'd say, Sam, could you spare Tommy tomorrow? I said, yeah, sure. So I used to go to all these other different places and big operations. My boss in Brooklyn had a small store. And then in my junior year, I started working in these huge markets in Long Island. And I got really, really good at it. I had a good foundation from my boss, you know, teaching me on how to make a display, on showing the best color of the fruit and why is one side of the fruit more colorful than the other. And he explained to me that the fruit with the most color grows on the outside of the trees. It gets more rain and more sun versus on the inside where it's mostly shaded and stuff. And so your job was to, pick a piece of fruit out very fast and look at the best side and make a display on it with it and make sure that it stood where you can put other fruit on top of it. And the whole idea was to make the big display look like one piece of fruit. That was the idea of it, like a picture.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so in my end of my junior year, beginning of senior year, I didn't want to go back to school. I didn't want to go to graduate school. I didn't want to try to get into law school. I was just done with it because I really enjoyed doing what I was doing. And I spoke to a couple of professors that I was close with, and they both told me, forget about school. If this is what you want to do, follow your heart. So I did that. And
it's great advice.
My parents went crazy. They went nuts. My mother cried every day, went to church more often than she wanted to, and my father wouldn't talk to me. Because I was the first, at all my cousins, I was the first one to go to college.
Oh, I didn't know you were the first of all of the cousins.
Of all of them, yeah.
Oh, damn. Okay.
And so it was momentous for them.
Yeah.
Being Sicilian immigrants and all.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's, in striving, that's what you're supposed to do. Work hard, buy a house, send your kids to school. And so we started looking at locations, me and my boss. And he was wary about getting a big store. And I didn't want a little one. I didn't want to struggle like he was doing. And, I wanted a big place because I've seen them. I've seen how much money these guys were making. So after 6 months of doing this, he told me that he didn't have the nerve to open up a big store. So now I'm left with nothing. So one of the locations we looked at was in Princeton, New Jersey. And I had a friend of mine from Brooklyn that left when he was 16 and was working for his brother. And he wound up buying the store from his brother in Princeton. So he had called me up, figuring I had opened up a store somewhere, and he asked me, how was it going? I said, no, it never happened. He says, why don't you learn the pizza business? I said, you crazy. I don't know anything about a pizza business other than eating it and ordering a Coke with it. And he says, I'll teach you. I said, well, let me think about it, Frank. His name was Frank as well.
Unsurprising.
And a couple of days later, I called them up, and I told them, I says, if I'm going to do it, I have to be honest with you. I don't want you to pay me. I don't need the money. He said, no, you got to get paid. I said, no. I said, why do you want to get paid? I said, well, 2 reasons. One, I don't need the money. And 2, I don't want none of the other employees feel that I'm taking their job away. And he said, all right, whatever, you fucking crazy bastard. And, so I went. I showed up that Monday, and he said, I put the whites on for the first time, which I was looking at myself. I looked like a clown with the whites on. Never had them on in my life, And so he said, come on, I'll teach you how to make a pizza. I said, no, I don't want to learn that way. What are you talking about? I said, I want to learn in the back. I learn how to make dough, cut cheese, make sauce, cut provisions, lettuce, tomato, whatever, onions. He said, all right. So I did that for 5 months. I wouldn't go up front. The 6th month, I went up front and I started waiting on customers, 1 at a time, 2 at a time. And I got really efficient at it. So then the 6th month, I started making pizzas. Fast forward, his brother was selling a place in Runnymede, New Jersey, which is exit 3 on the turnpike. He says, my brother's selling the place. I'm thinking of buying it. You want to be partners with me? So I did that. No, lent me $20,000, and 16 of it was my own money, which I didn't know. Because when I was a kid and I was working in the food stores, I would give the money over to my mother, and I would take a couple of bucks to go, whatever, $5, $10, and give her the rest, and she would put it in the bank. So we did that. We put down 40 grand, 20 each. We paid 175.
Incredible you still remember all these numbers.
Yeah.
Fucking unbelievable. And And this was Pizza Star, right?
This was Pizza Star, yep, on the Black Horse Pike.
So you kind of really you something that you fell into naturally. You just through your lived experience in the neighborhood, working at the produce. So it's just like something that ignited in you.
At that point, I was just interested in trying to make a living and not be a failure. I told them on the plane, I said, I can't go back to Brooklyn empty-handed. So I wound up working 6 months straight without a day off to bring down the debt. I was in the hole for like $20,000. I owed everybody money, everybody. I used to sell a sandwich and make a deposit where to go to the bank right away. That's how bad it was. And so anyway, I got out of debt and started going good. And I was making pretty good money. I started liking the business because I was doing it. And I was making the decisions to make it grow or fail. And I liked that part of it. Then when I got to Seaside Heights, I put my merchandising skills to bear. And I started displaying food, which was a big thing there. There's an old saying on the boardwalk, if you're not an instant success, you're an instant failure. And what that means is that there's so many people walking by. If it doesn't click, it's not going to click. It's not something that you can cultivate customers because every week they're different or every day they're different. You're never going to see the same person twice.
And those are some of my earliest memories are the boardwalk. Anytime I walk into the back of a restaurant or in a restaurant, I get that restaurant smell. Mm-hmm. Just like instantly transported back to Tommy's food court.
Yep.
But thank you for sharing all that, Dad.
Yeah,
no
incredible.
problem.
Well, it's so special too because it's like we've started talking about the movie without talking about the movie.
Yeah.
But
big time.
If anyone's watched this, prior to listening to us, you already know you're like I just finished watching it. So I'm prepped for these stories, Tom. That was very exciting.
Thank you.
To hear. But we'll dive in.
Okay.
And because I'm sure I have so many questions for you as we go through this film.
Sure.
But the movie we're talking about today on our 100th episode is Big Night from 1966. This film
1996.
1996. Big Night from 1996, written by Joseph Tropiano and Stanley Tucci, co-directed by Campbell Scott and Stanley Tucci, starring Stanley Tucci, Tony Shalhoub, Minnie Driver, Ian Holm, Isabella Rossellini, Campbell Scott, and Mark Anthony. Unbelievable cast. Stacked. This film had a budget of $4.1 million and a box office of $14.2 million. So not too bad. And if you haven't seen this in a while, or maybe you just want to recap, Big Night tells the story of two Italian immigrant brothers, Primo and Secundo, who run a struggling Italian restaurant in 1950s New Jersey. And in an effort to save their business, they plan a lavish dinner for a famous Italian-American band leader, Louis Prima, hoping to impress him and attract new customers. And as the night progresses, tensions build between the brothers, and the dinner turns into a pivotal moment for their future.
So a little bit of historical context for when this movie was released on September 20th, 1996. This is the first movie we're covering from 1996. Oh, wow. Holy shit. Okay. So what's going on in 1996? Bill Clinton was reelected for a second term as U.S. president by defeating former Senate Majority Leader Bob Dole, the Republican nominee, and Ross Perot, the Reform Party nominee. Rupert Murdoch entered the 24-hour news business and launched the Fox News Channel. Wow. MSNBC was also launched, and Hotmail came online. One of those things has not stood the test of time. Michael Jordan signed a one-year NBA contract for $25 million, and a devastating nor'easter paralyzed the East Coast for the better part of a week. Also in 1996. Was that
big. That was a big one. I remember that
The
one because
snowstorm, yeah. You remember?
Yeah, that was
remember
huge.
Max got lost in the snow?
Oh,
We
wait,
couldn't
that
find
was
him.
that was that year's blizzard.
It took
Oh
me-
yeah,
it
that
took us
Who's
3
Max?
days to get out of the driveway.
our old dog. Yeah.
oh
Remember they were
Yeah.
plowing. I offered the guy $100 and he wouldn't plow the driveway. I wanted to kill him.
yeah, that was crazy. I remember walking in Brooklyn and like you would be on top of cars and not know
yeah,
it. That's
yeah,
just
bad.
how we don't get snowstorms like that anymore. But that That was epic.
That was epic. I built a sick snow fort during that blizzard. Also in 1996, the words ad blocker, burner phone, cyber attack, DVR, flip phone, Gen Z, geotag, kiteboarding, live streaming, and smartphone are all appear in print for the first time. Damn, 1996. A lot going on.
Yeah.
So, Dad, we start the conversation by asking our guest, why did you choose this movie to talk about on this podcast?
I'd probably seen it about 20 years ago. I didn't see it when it first came out. I don't know why, but I guess because it was an independent movie and wasn't shown in a lot of places.
Widely released, yeah.
So I had watched it. I think John Wirtz, a friend of mine from grammar school, told me about it, and I rented it, Blockbuster, and I thought it was a great movie. A great movie. And then 3 years ago, I watched it again, Cold Snack, with Anthony Masser and his wife, and he'd never seen it. Could you imagine that?
Oh, really?
Yeah, he'd never heard of it, he'd never seen it, and I told him who was in it. He said, oh, yeah, I'd love to see it. Anyway, and it's just a great movie. At the time, they opened up this restaurant. By the way, it was filmed in Keyport. That was Broad Street that you were looking at, where the restaurant was. And the beach scene was the next town over, Kingsburg.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so in the 50s, when this movie came out, if you noticed if you noticed in the kitchen, there was no hood there. I don't know if they did that on purpose because they couldn't shoot it properly, looking down on them, but that was interesting. And the prep table was behind the stove, which you'd never see that. It would be on the left or the right of it, or behind it, These
are the details.
It's like going over a fireplace to grab stuff.
No, you're right. You're right.
This is why we wanted you as a guest on them for this film. He's
always got notes on the layout. The layout is important.
The other thing is, at that time in the 50s, people were basically eating shit and barking at the moon. They had no idea what Prima was trying to do, making good food. And there was a scene with Stanley Tucci and Ian Holm when he gives them some advice, and he told them, the guy wants to eat a steak, give him a steak. And after you get customers, then you can do what you want. Mm-hmm. But you got to be a businessman first. You can't, do it the way your brother wants to do it. Not going to work. Yeah, that was one of the parts of the movie that I enjoyed. And I enjoyed the two immigrant brothers trying to make something. Stanley Tucci had more aspirations of the American dream and what it stood for, making money, the nice suits, looking at that Cadillac. He never should have got in that car. That was, he just came back from the bank and he asked him how much he had left. It said $62.47. He had no right to do that. His brother never would have done that. He wouldn't even buy the basil from the guy because it was no good.
Yeah. Yeah, all black and wilted.
Yeah.
So I had never heard of this movie until you suggested it. I mean, you've maybe mentioned it to me before, but this is my first time watching it. And I agree with you. It's a beautiful movie. I'm surprised it doesn't have more cultural resonance or a cultural footprint, because I just thought it was from top to tails just like such a well-told story. Like we're saying, incredible cast. Has a lot of very deep themes in it, like you're mentioning, like the way that the American dream is interpreted and internalized, especially by Primo. This idea of assimilation versus cultural authenticity is heavily baked into here. But I loved it. And also, having grown up working for you in your restaurants my entire life, just, any movie about a restaurant that's done well is always going to hit in a special way. You know?
The other thing is it was made in 1996, and I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but that was the time, almost the exact time that Mario Batali started getting his wings on trying to do authentic stuff.
Okay.
And then right behind him came all these other people, Caliglio and all these other guys behind that trying to do something authentic, So I don't know if that had anything, but it was at that time when all of this stuff was happening, where an Italian restaurant could could really go out and experiment with stuff.
Well, it's so funny, Frank, that so I never saw, we just recorded a Monsters, Inc. episode, which was like, big Disney movie. I never saw that as a kid, but I did see Big Night as a kid.
Wow.
So it's so odd because I remember this made such a big impact. I just remember my mom loved it. It was like just a movie that I remember seeing really early on. And so I just assumed it was a big, like everyone knew it, but I guess it was just like happened to be something that stuck. And when you see it that young, I mean, it was just the acting is unbelievable. The storytelling's unbelievable. I mean, it really is. It's like a top 50 movie for sure. I mean,
it's great. It's wonderful.
It's perfect storytelling.
The acting between Tony Shalhoub and Stanley Tucci was really, really authentic. I mean, they went to Yale Conservatory together. That's where they met.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I mean, and you can tell, like, there is something so theatrical about it where it could be on stage. I mean, it could be staged. It should be staged. It's just like the trust in just the basic plot points of the film are so profound. The way it ends, I mean, they just do such a good job of giving you just enough story, but also just trusting the lens to like capture the food and like the relationships. And it's really kind of simple at the end. It's like a simple story at the end of the day that tells a really complex story about being an American immigrant, about food. And I think watching it was interesting watching it for this podcast and through the lens of politics. And I found it really hopeful. Like, I found there to be a really hopeful political message at the end of the day, which for me felt like, the kind of biggest takeaway I had was just this idea of like where he's asked Seko, Tucci's character for the second brother is asked by the sort of the businessman, evilish character, well, what kind of guy do you want to be? And the answer to that is like, to me, was like, I want to be the kind of guy who goes back to the kitchen and cooks breakfast for like my family, who seems to be everyone. Like Mark Anthony's character, I thought was really interesting. Giancarlo was treated really equally in that respect. And it kind of had like, to me, I was like, that feels like it has something to do with what I would call like a socialist horizon. Like the dream is like, get all of this business capitalist bullshit out of the way so that we can do what matters most, which is feed each other and have the human experience over the dinner table, which is, I think, what to me the film was like. So I found myself really emotional watching it because it was so about just like what we all just want at the end of the day is to sit down with family and friends over good food.
What did you think about Mark Anthony's character? Why he had no lines? I think he said one thing during the whole movie.
Yeah.
I thought he was the eyes of the people watching the movie, the way he looked and stared at everything. I thought he was us looking at them.
That's a really good
point. I think one, you need to have someone else working in the restaurant. It can't just be these two guys. It can't just be the two brothers. It's like they need help. So it's like, who is that character? And I think you're right. He does serve as like a fly on the wall, but is also clearly integrated into their chosen family of the people that work and at this restaurant. And he has no opinion of either brother.
Well, you're right. You're right, Tom, because we start with him, right? The film opens specifically on him.
Yeah, because he's looking at the ocean like Italy.
Yeah, and ends with him. And I mean, I didn't know if he was supposed to be Italian. I just assumed he was Puerto Rican because it's Mark Anthony. But like, they never, did they say? It's kind of...
He spoke once, and I thought he spoke in Spanish. Or did he speak in Italian, Dad?
I don't remember. I don't remember when he spoke. I think it was in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, right in the beginning in that first scene, he has one line.
But I thought that was just an interesting casting choice because I also thought, like, thinking about that time, about the Italian immigrant, the Puerto Rican immigrant, like, at the time, it was just, there was such a clear camaraderie, solidarity, and understanding of that experience. And also he has no lines. He's like clearly not the owner, but he is watching. I mean, I think you're right. He's watching to sort of see how this turns out. And at the end, it turns out where they make him breakfast and kind of take him in. And it is a question of like, what kind of man are you going to be? Like, what kind of choice are you going to make? And I felt like the choice was to turn away in some ways from the capitalist instinct.
Yeah. The other thing that was really I was watching him make the eggs, and that's really hard to do in an aluminum pan. I mean, he did it perfectly. I mean, nothing got stuck. It was unbelievable.
Great observation.
I mean, that scene was incredible. The breakfast scene when he's making those, unbelievable.
Unbelievable choice. We're jumping to the end, but we could jump all over. But yeah, unbelievable choice to end the movie with a oneer, which is a one take, Dad. That's all done in one shot. You know, like Tucci makes the breakfast, Mark Anthony comes in, Tony Shalhoub comes in. That's all in one take, and just like such a strong choice for the end of the movie. To after these guys have fought, after the ordeal of running this restaurant together has literally made them fight each other on the beach, to then shake all of that shit off the next morning, completely hungover as well, but to just come together and share that meal together was such a beautiful message, such a beautiful ending to the movie. Riv, I that's interesting that you found that hopeful. I love the ending and what it represented for these brothers, but I mean, they're like, ultimately they're going to lose the restaurant, you know, and ultimately we don't know if Segundo, Tucci's character, has moved past this sort of internalization of what, you know, the pressure of the American dream has put on him. True. And we don't know if Primo is going to go back to Italy by himself. We don't know if Segundo is going to stay and work for Pascal. I felt like the movie, in a way, was about how like this sort of ruthless market competition can completely just stamp all of the passion out of you for like why you got into this thing in the first place, you know? Like Primo just wanted to make good food. Segundo also just wanted to run a good restaurant, and like they were doing it, but the market pressures was like Primo says, this country is eating us alive. This place is eating us alive. Yeah. I thought it was so sad, but also it just rang so true.
It is absolutely true, because you need to do both. You know, I always wanted, when I got into the business, my father told me, he says, make sure you do it right. He says, if you can't do it right, move over. People will have more respect for you by knowing that you know your own limitations, instead of trying to trick somebody or fool somebody or rob somebody. But in the restaurant business, I guess any business, you really have to do the right thing. You know, one thing I realized way back when I was a kid eating, you can't fool people's palate. It's impossible. You can lie, you can cheat, you can do a million things to fuck them over. But you're not going to screw his senses over. Putting something in your mouth, the smell, that's impossible. And if you can do that right, it takes time to be successful, you know. The other thing is the success is always behind you. It's never in front of you. That's what I think Stanley Tucci didn't realize. If he would have listened to the brother a little bit more and incorporated the American menu with his brother's stuff as specials and introduced it that way, it would have been fine, I think. But success is always behind you. You got to put the work in first.
Yeah, and I guess we don't know. I mean, I guess what I loved was like, who knows if it would be fine, but that there was something, exactly like you're saying, there was something that they stuck to the truth of like the food, even though he sort of knew the restaurant might crumble. I don't know. My dad recently said this thing to me that I'm still trying to piece together. He'll talk to me in riddles sometimes, but you know, he's a Libra too. So I was talking about like optimism. He's like, actually, optimism isn't the most, pessimism is the most optimistic, because it means you're aware that there's other options. And like, there was something about the pessimism of the ending that I guess I found optimistic. Like, because I totally agree with what you're saying, Frank, where it's like, heartbreaking that they can't fight these systems, that they can't fight, you know, this market, the competition, how big the whole thing is, and how there's a depth of unfairness to that material reality and the bigger picture, and that like the human instinct, because he could have trickled that down. I guess going back to Mark Anthony's character, he could have returned and been just fucking nasty, fired him, just like bared down on like, we have to just change everything. You know, we know what that would look like, and just abandon his brother, abandon the desire to give people good food and community. And he instead of abandoning that, which maybe isn't going to win him in the long term, I felt like there was a bigger win in a sense to go and just feed the two of them and to not let it turn into, just a bitterness. And I guess that's why you pointing out, Tom, that Mark Anthony's character really is our lens through our like kind of moral lens through the whole movie, is like we're also watching to see like how do you treat this person who really is like the laborer to these two brothers. And that choice at the end, I think, tells us everything we need to know about where they sit. And that made me hopeful, is like that if there's any kind of like fighting spirit, it's that.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to bring up was in 1956, Swanson introduced TV dinners. So they're going against that backdrop.
Wow.
Sure.
Where people were accustomed,
or separation. I mean, the whole movie is about this giant table where like, and the way they do the close-ups of all the faces and the people enjoying food, it's like, that to me is inherently political, because exactly like you're saying, they're going to come up against this deep intentional divide of people sitting in front of their TVs and not having that connection and eating shitty food.
Someone told me recently that Americans like didn't know about garlic until the 1990s. Like everything was just completely like bland as shit prior to that. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's an over exaggeration, but
I don't know. My mother always used garlic.
Well, obviously Nana used garlic, but I'm talking about in like in American cuisine, like in like regular white Americans cuisine.
Yeah, probably not that much. Although we sold a case a week in Brooklyn. I mean, 30 pounds of garlic we sold.
All right. Okay. Well, Dad, how do you square then if you're saying that you can't lie to people's palates? Mm-hmm. One of the big conflicts in the movies and one of the big sticking points is that Pascal's restaurant, Ian Holm's restaurant across the street, mm-hmm. is killing it. They're packed to the gills every single night.
Right.
But Shaloub says, he should be in prison for the food that he sells.
It's rape what he does.
Yeah, that's what he says. Such a good scene. Yeah. Such a good line.
And then they have that, and then I loved the choice of the movie to not make. Because, Pascal is the quote-unquote villain, but it was interesting, and I thought it was going to be that when we meet him. I thought it was going to be like the brothers hate him, he hates the brothers, but I loved the choice that Tucci and him are friends, and he's like kind of like a mentor to him, and does want, and like to an extent, wants them to succeed. And they have that incredible scene in the office where, he's saying, first give them what they want, and then you can give them what you want. You're like, if people like steak, make a mistake. But like, if the food is shit, then like, isn't that kind of go against the ethos of what you're talking about?
No, the opposite, because what the customers were eating was what they were used to. So if they're eating, what he was serving, and it's okay, right? Mm-hmm. And then you try to give somebody risotto. And then the woman asks him, isn't it supposed to be seafood risotto with scallops and shrimp? And Tucci says, yeah, it's in there, but how come I don't see it? That they were trying to introduce that to them, which is hard to do when you're having spaghetti and meatballs.
Yeah, maybe it's just more of a snapshot of this specific time in American culture when people weren't as well-versed in foreign cuisines, and just wanted to eat
correct,
the same shit that they've been eating.
Because they were from northern Italy, the two brothers.
Yeah, Calabria, right?
Yeah, no, north of Rome.
Oh, okay.
In that area. It seems so, because he was talking about Bologna with the florist, and the uncle opened up a place in Rome. In the 50s, and before that, the 1880s, through the 70s, everybody was coming over from southern Italy, Calabria and Sicily. You really had very few people from the north. So you would never have that refined Italian cooking in America at that time, specifically.
Sure.
In the 50s, you would have southern food you would have had. And, and you got to understand that then the grandmothers, maybe they were first generation, and the second generation, I'm sorry, and the kids would be more Americanized with the food versus what my mother was making, when my friends used to come over, they used to go crazy about the food. And their parents were Italian, but they didn't cook like my mother.
Oh, wow.
But she was an immigrant.
Yeah.
And she cooked that way. She didn't find the tricks or losing the authenticity of how they made stuff in Sicily. So there was a big difference. There's like a 20-year difference, one generation apart of eating. When my friends came over, they used to go crazy.
Well, it makes me think of after they have the whole meal and they're on to dessert, and the first thing you see is a woman who's like bent over on the table crying. And he's like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "My mother couldn't cook." You know, just the realization of like,
Exactly, yeah.
just, which is actually pretty profound, because I think to this point, there is like a, you know, and I know you wrote in a question about the term radicalized, but I do think that these people are potentially being radicalized by this food, to the sense of like, they're waking up to like what it could actually be.
Yeah.
And how profound that is. And I think when you're desensitized, like you're saying, your palate is so used to spaghetti and meatballs, and you're just you can't even see past or understand that there might be seafood in this delicious dish. But as soon as you taste it, like the power of that food to awaken a whole new world, like suddenly this woman's like, there's a whole world that I just never even had access to. And I think when we talk about politics, a lot of times, that's the hope, is that people can start to see beyond the spaghetti and meatballs of their political life, to maybe even just wake up to like, wait, things could be better than this. Like, this isn't actually, there's actually no flavor in this food. Like, there's so much more potential.
Brilliant metaphor, Riv. Absolutely brilliant. The last thing I want to say about the Pascal character, Ian Holm, which also, what a wild choice to cast Englishman Ian Holm to do this ridiculous, over-the-top Italian character. His accent was decent. It was decent. Yeah.
His choices were great, though.
His choices were unbelievable. Like, you know, that fucking guy, who's just like such a showman. And for whatever reason, because of like the money and power that he's accrued, he feels that he can pinch you whenever he wants, or just like suddenly yell at you, and you're like, I mean, you can get away with being eccentric. You have all of this fucking money. But that last thing he says to Tucci in the office, Tucci's like, you know, he knows that he's only got one last shot to save his own restaurant, and he says it's just all too much. And Pascal says it's never too much, it's only not enough. And I felt like that was such a telling line for his character, and it made me turn against him, because you see that he is compromised, because he's already talking about like, you compromise, you make all these compromises to make the money, because the money is what's important. And you see that he's compromised himself so much, or maybe this is just his ideology. It's not about it for him. It's not about creating community. It's not about serving good food. It's not about, you know, introducing people to these new types of cuisines. For him, it's just about the fucking money, you know? And I didn't love it. I don't love that, you know? I feel like, Dad, you, in all the places that you ran, you were able to strike this balance where, you know, obviously, as you said, you wanted to make a living for yourself, but I mean, people would come into Gaetano's all the time. Gaetano's was my father's full-service Italian restaurant in Red Bank, New Jersey. When 99 to when?
99 to 2016.
99 to 2016.
Yeah, I'll never forget. We got to go in college. A bunch of us went, and we got to sing and perform there and eat
That's
there.
right.
It was unbelievable.
Oh, you were there, Rivka?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, that was a good night.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
That was a great night.
That was a big night.
That was a big night.
That was a big night.
And I didn't mean it to say about the movie, but it was a big night. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but it had that same same energy, you know. But there were items on the menu, Zabaione being one of them, Ossobuco, where people would come in and be like, I never heard of this thing, and then they would try it, and then you'd be like, holy shit! Oh,
well,
my God.
They never had it with lamb. It was always veal. I was the first one to put lamb on the menu.
That's right.
Yeah, well, the Greeks do it a lot. They have lamb ossobuco, but I was the first one because I did it because of course. Not that I didn't want to buy the veal. It was too much money. I always was conscious of how much I can charge, you know. So that's why I picked the lamb. And it was a big giant piece with over 30 ounces each one.
Oh, yeah. Huge lamb shank.
Yeah, and the lamb, I bought the best ones from Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah, the animals are bigger there for some reason. They're different breeds. Yeah, New York, Pennsylvania lamb is they're very small, the animals. If you see the lamb shanks in the supermarket, they're tiny. And I always bought the hind shank.
Okay.
Very important because that held all the weight. That's why they were meatier. The fore shanks it had that much weight on them. They were kind of thin.
Good to know. My dad has all of, you name any piece of meat, any vegetable, fruit, whatever, he can give you all the details about
Amazing.
why it is the way it is, why the best way to grow it.
Well, that's the other part of it that Primo knew. He knew about this stuff. It was important to know where this stuff came from and how it grows and what's good and what's not good and buying quality. Why is it quality? Well, it's because of this reason,
Which feels like such an important skill, and it's something that's like, particularly now, feels like it's so quickly being lost. When, I mean, you talked about TV dinners, but now we have so many food services that are just, can you bring it's all about, can you make it healthy, fast, so I don't have to think about the food, so I can just get to further work. And like, it's totally a lost art form.
Yeah, especially in this country, they don't teach kids like they do in Europe, or like in Italy, for instance, or even in Switzerland. Switzerland, I remember, who my cousin told me that they teach kids where the food comes from.
Wow.
In this country, you think a head of lettuce came from a factory, that they have no idea that it comes from the ground. Or you have to dig up a potato, that it's a root vegetable. Why do they call it a root vegetable? Because there's a root to it. Like celery is a root vegetable. They don't think that grows the same way a potato does or a carrot. I mean, in Europe, the kids understand these things and they're more apt to eat healthier, and that's why they are healthier, because they know about the food. Whereas in this country, all the kid knows is chicken nuggets.
Right. And I would argue there's like a political reasoning behind that, of like, it serves this industry that's only growing.
Well, that's one thing. The other thing is there were too many nationalities in this country. How are you supposed to, make everything streamlined where you got all of these different cultures?
Well, isn't that kind of what you're saying? And like, in the beauty of this film is like, in some ways, I think, why do we have to, like, we don't necessarily have to streamline it unless it's for a TV dinner, And like, that there's a beauty in that people are sort of, and that was the other thing, like the dinner table that they have at Big Night, like, it was very cool that there was it was for the 50s at least, it seemed like a pretty diverse group of people who you would have a sense of like had never tasted food like this, and just opening up like the awareness of like, again, the potential of what could be there if we let go of the idea that there has to be one streamlined like TV dinner that you can sell to the masses, and trusted to teach kids about where food came from and have a palate. Like this idea of this palate that you're talking about, Tom, I think is pretty revolutionary.
I mean, that's also like, the food in this country is also a direct result of American capitalism and just I
would say more so marketing.
But
if they didn't put the toy in the McDonald's Happy Meal, they wouldn't have sold any of them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I used to fight with them. I should take the toys from them until they finished eating.
That's right.
The first thing they grabbed was the toy.
And as someone who didn't get to go to McDonald's, the toy was like, the illicit toy was very big in my, I mean, it got me even though I never got to go get it. But like, that was, you're right.
No, but I'm talking specifically about how the food industry, the factory farming system, the grocery store industry, the companies that process all of these foods in this country have spent decades of lobbying the government saying, hey, let us put the most unhealthy shit in here. Let us do whatever the fuck we want. In Europe, it's much, much more heavily regulated. That's why.
Because it's different there. We sold food like we sold cars over here through marketing. Shiny cars, the good-looking girl, the house, all of that stuff, everything that America wants to, we're prized to be and stuff. In Europe, it was totally different. You got to understand, Italy, they used to make Ferraris by hand.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because then it does make the choice to have that scene with the car salesman really connected and pivotal, and that Seko doesn't. He gets in the car. He doesn't fully buy into it, but the temptation is there. And you're right, how connected that is to this, what they want to do with food. They just want to treat it like cars and disconnect it from the fact that, like, A, it's a human right to have good food to eat. And how we're just so disconnected from that. I mean, how hard, it's unbelievable how hard it is. Even for us who have so much privilege to even still, like, be able to get good food or take the time to, like, figure out how do I make time in this life to really sit down and cook. Like, it's our whole society's not set up for that, and it's so backwards, and all of it ultimately serves just trying to make more money and survive under capitalism, you know, in either way. But it is the most, like, important thing to sit down. I guess I'm thinking about this a lot as I'm about to have a kid, of, like, that is so, those family meals were just so, that's what you remember. You don't remember the stuff that you were begging for. You know, you don't really remember the McDonald's toy. You don't really remember, like, the cash and prizes, all those things. You remember the meals you shared with family and that you got to sit down for.
And I thought that was such a sad thing for Seko, in that he was not allowing himself to be present during the dinner. He was completely missing the absolutely wonderful experience that he and his brother had created for all of these people, because he said that Louis Prima hasn't shown up. And, like, obviously, for sure, be sad that Louis Prima doesn't show up, but just so many scenes of him just, like, off in the kitchen by himself while everyone in the dining room is just having Isabella Rossellini, she says, "Thank you for what is probably the best meal I've ever had in my entire life." Like, these people are absolutely loving this moment, and he's so preoccupied with the business, with the money, with Louis Prima, with, like, making it in America. And it's not just the money. Like, it's clearly through his relationship with Minnie Driver, the Cadillac, all these little notes that, you know, he wants to achieve this status. He wants to be able to show off of his money. It's not just about keeping the restaurant open. It's also like, I need to achieve something. He won't even have sex with Minnie Driver until he's rich enough, effectively. He says in the first scene together.
Wow, that was true. Though. A lot of people did that, though. They get married first till they had a little nest egg.
Yeah, but he's also sleeping with Isabella Rossellini.
Yeah. I don't know if that's an American thing or an Italian thing. Yeah, he wasn't truthful.
Well, and I think that is a very telling and interesting choice, that with, like, the white American woman, he's like, no. I have to achieve more first,
right,
before we do something serious here.
Yeah.
But with Isabella Rossellini, who's also an Italian immigrant, he's like, yeah, we can fuck whatever you want. That's fine.
Well, the other thing is, with Louis Prima coming, Tucci looked at it as if it was a gimmick to get people to come.
Oh, yeah.
The guy who's going to review the restaurant, the photographer, he thought all of this stuff was going to propel him, and the next day he was going to be busy all of a sudden. So he really had false ideas about what this dinner was really about. He was thinking, oh, tomorrow I'm going to have $6,247 in the bank, instead of $62.47.
Well, and then on the other hand, Primo, who is so dedicated to the food and just wanting it to be so good and ends up succeeding with that, has, like, the best night.
Yeah.
Like, actually overcomes his fear of, like, talking to Anne, played by Allison Janney. And, like, they just, like, hit it. I mean, they have this beautiful scene over, like, a meal he's cooking. Like, he's just having the best time and, like, succeeding. And so you're seeing the two separate sides of it.
Yeah, because for him, it's just about the food. It's just about the food and the people. And yeah, it was really sad that Seko wasn't able to be present and enjoy that experience that they had created for everybody.
Right, because he put so much pressure on the night.
Yeah, and on himself, and on.
But I think that's his arc, right? Like, that's, I guess, why I think it was so beautiful at the end for him to make that omelet, because I think he sees it.
You're right.
And to feed 3 people from 2 eggs, that's also hard to do.
Well, they also had bread.
Yeah.
They had some bread. Yeah. Really fast, I want to talk just about this. We touched on it, but this idea of, like, assimilating versus remaining culturally authentic. And Dad, I know this is something that you and I have talked about, especially you growing up in Brooklyn, first generation. But I just thought it was the the writing in this movie is so fucking good. The first lines of exchange between Primo and Segundo is Primo asking Segundo, does this need more salt? Does this dish need more salt? But in Italian.
Right.
And Segundo says, what? And he makes Primo repeat himself, but in English.
Right.
And right off the bat, you're like, oh, okay, so Tucci wants to assimilate. Primo doesn't give a shit about that. And yeah, I don't know. And it's also tied in with this idea of the American dream. You know, you move to this country, you have to become more like a quote unquote American, whatever that means, even though America is literally a melting pot. And just all of the tension with that. I mean, obviously, we haven't even touched on it, but just like the amazing bits of like a woman wants spaghetti with her risotto, and he's just like, it's another starch. She's like, what do you want me to make? I'll make a mashed potatoes for her. When he suggests, when Primo suggests putting hot dogs on the menu just to rub it in Tucci's face, like all of this stuff was so good. Like you said at the top, Rivka, such a simple story, but so many complex themes that I really, really appreciated. And Dad, what was that like for you, without going too into detail, but like, did you ever feel that pressure to assimilate growing up in Brooklyn, speaking Italian in the household?
Yeah, well, I learned English on the street. I don't remember learning English.
Wow.
We spoke Italian, Sicilian, I should say. They never spoke. And look, they were here for 40 years, and their English was horrible. The only words my mother knew was no sales tax when she went shopping.
That's amazing.
That's the only 3 words she knew.
That's profound.
Yeah.
No, that's really amazing, because you're right. The way they used language and the way they talk.
Well, no, I knew that I was keenly aware of it. The clothes that my mother picked out for me to wear. I was going to Sicily for 3 months in the summer all the time. I missed my first week in high school because we had to stay till September 8th because of the Feast of the Madonna, and she couldn't miss it. I said, Mom, we have school. I don't care. And it was hard. It was very hard, and then bringing them there, back to school night and stuff. I'd have to translate what the teacher was saying. I just could have lied the whole time,
She says, I'm doing great. Straight A's.
Yeah.
No notes.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was hard. But as I got older, I appreciated it more, of the love and the care that they took for each child, and what my father did to earn a living, and what my mother did around the house. She made bread every other day. She made bread. She sewed for a couple of tailors on the street to bring work to her. She used to sew. Not that she needed the money, just to contribute. She always used to say, your father makes $1, I turn it into $1.50 because of her saving money. I remember the first time we went out to eat, it was my older brother's 8th grade graduation. And we went to Lundy's in Sheepshead Bay. And my mother didn't leave a tip. And the waiter was chasing us out of the restaurant. And I'm telling her, my brother's telling her, I'm telling you, got to leave a tip. No, we paid for the food. What are you going to leave a tip for? That's his job. And my father could never argue with her. He learned a long time ago to just keep your mouth shut. I'll live longer. Which he did. He died when he was 100.
That's true.
Yeah, no, it was different. But like I said, I appreciated it more as I got older and realized. And the thing that really helped was going to Sicily and realizing why they were the way they were. When I went there in 1962, I was 8 years old. My grandmother had chickens. Everybody had chickens on the street.
Yeah.
And the people that were still farming had a mule on the first floor or a donkey. So it was different. It was great. Sicily is great.
It is.
It's a great country.
It's a beautiful place.
And Frank, what about you? Do you ever have a desire to learn Sicilian, like to learn how to speak in?
Oh, wow! Really put me on the spot here.
I'm just
in front
asking
of my
because,
father.
well, I guess I'm thinking about it because it's like, as you were talking about that, Tom, I'm like, yeah, my father also, like, he learned English from the Beatles when he came over here to study in college, but like had to kind of just like quickly assimilate to be able to learn the language. And just how I know for myself as like 3rd generation from that, the language, like I'm just fascinated by how language carries so much of that weight of assimilation. And then when you try and learn later in life, there's like a big conversation around Puerto Ricans now especially Boricuas, around like what it means to then the shame that comes with trying to learn your mother tongue language later, and like just it's very loaded. So I think it's a really interesting conversation.
I mean, I've tried before. There was the most earnest attempt I made was between my junior and senior year of college. I got like the Rosetta Stone, and I was like, I'm trying to learn Italian. And I just fell off. I got back to school senior year, and I just was like, I don't have time. Senior year of college, we gotta party, and I never prioritized it as much as I should have. And always in my mind, I've thought, one day I'll learn it. One day I'll, just make the time and do it. And I don't know if I ever will. It's something I would love to. It was something I would love to just know. I mean, obviously, we'd all would love to just be bilingual magically, but I am sad sometimes that I never learned and never actually like made the full effort to. Especially just because a lot of our family are fluent Italian speakers. Less so in our generation, but I never got to have like a real conversation with my nono and nonna. My dad or my uncles would translate for us. There are a few times where I wrote nono letters in Italian. I would write in English and then I would translate it and then give it. I would have my dad proofread. But yeah, it's a bummer. I don't. One time I told you, Dad, I was like, you should have just spoke Italian to us as we were growing up, so we could have learned.
Right. Blame it on me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Blame it on you. But I think you said, I remember you said at one point, you were like, it's like, yeah, I mean, I didn't think that you guys would want to learn Italian. I was embarrassed to be speaking Italian as I was growing up. So like, why would I think that this would be something that you guys would then want to like take with you?
Right.
I think it's such a real thing that that so many generations are just kind of like wrestling with. And it is one of the things, like when you said what were people assimilating to, like what American were people assimilating to? I think so much of it had to do with the American dream and capitalism. Like you have to assimilate in order to make money, really. Kind of was like a big part of it. There wasn't actually a cult, like so much of the culture was just built around, well, you have to share this in order to make money. And so that's what that's about versus whatever those sharing language in this way. So I'm with you. I mean, I'm not fluent in Spanish yet, and it's always something that I'm thinking about. But, back to the movie, I think the way they write in those, I mean, language happens throughout. Like there's a scene between Minnie Driver and Isabella Rossellini when she uses the word vast. And it's not like Minnie Driver's playing a character who has like a vast like English language, but she uses the word vast. And just the way Isabella Rossellini takes that in as sort of like a moment of insult, and then like kind of turns back to her and talks to her about, oh, have you been out west? Like, maybe I should get a cowboy. It's just such good writing. It's so fascinating. And then there was the other scene that I thought was hilarious, where they're like, you can't say rain outside because it can't rain inside. Then they get to this debate about how to say rain.
Yes, the writing is so good. That scene is so good. Just like these little moments between characters, because that was a moment of Tucci making fun of his brother in front of Pascal. So there's like a status thing going on and a language thing going on. And the tension is just like all there in the exchange of words and conversation, but like not on the surface. Yeah, it's a really deep, complex movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and to tie up our conversation just about the language piece, and like, it just made me think, like, as I've kind of tackled, like, I know I have felt so much shame in being like, how do I pick up a language that I have pieces of? Like, I know that I know Spanish. In some ways, it's like in my blood, because I did grow up hearing my dad speak it the way I'm sure you grew up. Like you said, you grew up, your family was speaking this language. But I guess destigmatizing, like, this has nothing to do with us individually. Like, it was sort of a bigger than us that we didn't learn these things. Just, Frank, we talk about that all the time, of like, part of recognizing the systems of capitalism is taking away from feeling this like individual shame of things not working out a certain way or not being able to succeed in a certain way. And I think the same goes for that piece that helps me having this conversation about language of like, oh, right. Because sometimes shame can then just keep you from learning at all. and just pushing it away. And that like a little bit is better than nothing. And actually the reason that I don't know this language is so much more complex than me and my individual family. Like there's this whole thing that goes way beyond us, which I think is helpful.
That's a good point. All right. Should we give this movie some awards? Dad, was there anything else you wanted to mention before we do the awards?
No, just that the other writer was Stanley Tucci's cousin.
Oh, wow.
Joe Tropiano.
Joe Tropiano.
That was his cousin.
Good to know.
That's really
I
good
wonder
to
if
know.
he did anything else. Cool.
Well, one other thing before we do go to awards that I have to ask is the dish that they make, like the big dish in the middle of the pasta dish, the
Timpano.
The timpano. Have you made that?
No, I never heard of it before this movie.
Interesting.
They made in Sicily pasta al forno, which had egg and chopped meat in it and peas. It was baked in the oven. It was, I think it was ziti, I believe it was. It wasn't lasagna. It was a big hard thing.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, they used to bring it over to the town baker to bake it because the ovens weren't big enough. They had little tiny ovens. They cooked everything.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, cool. Good to know.
Yeah, I'd never seen a timpano before either, but I want to eat one. Look good.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So, Dad, we give each movie 3 awards. Our first award is Best Politics. So this goes to the character with the best politics in the movie, whoever you think that might be.
I don't know. I think it's either Primo or the barber, one of those two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are good. Primo's a good one. Although he's a little, he's a little stubborn. Actually, I thought...
You could be stubborn and have good politics.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Primo, I think, probably because of this conversation and just the idea of like the power of what he brings with his food and sticking to how just like hard that is to stick to that authentic.
Yeah.
The authenticity in the face of like everything, all the pressures that they are facing.
Yeah, it's Primo. He doesn't want to abandon his culture. He doesn't want to compromise, which is it's a pretty brave choice, especially during this time, for sure.
And if anything, his arc is like he leans even further into that, like he kind of lets go and like kind of becomes his full self through this big night.
Yeah.
Primo it is. All right. Our second award goes to the character with the worst politics in the movie. This is the worst politics award. I mean,
I think it's probably Pascal.
Yeah.
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 And he names them. He names them pretty clearly.
Yeah. What does he say? What's his last line? I'm a businessman. I'll be whatever I need to be. Ugh.
I'm anything I need to be at any time.
Anything I need to be. Yeah.
And then he reveals sort of just by saying like, your brother's a great investment. That he's just viewed him even though you're like, he enjoys the food, he's just viewed him as an opportunity this whole time and didn't see him as human.
Yeah, and then he even said, and you too, he said. He wasn't going to mention him. He wasn't going to mention Stanley Tucci.
Although I can't wait to be at a meal. I want to be at a meal and just like slam my fist down and be like, God damn it, this is so fucking good. I should fucking kill you.
That
was such a good line.
Great that was such a good moment. The whole dinner. So many of these little moments in this movie. If you have not seen this movie and we've already listened to this whole podcast, go watch this movie. It is an absolute joy.
Don't watch it hungry. I fucked up and did that.
Don't watch it hungry. Definitely not. All right, and our last award is Better Supporting Character. So this goes to your favorite supporting character and maybe a movie you would want to see about them.
Oh, that's a twofold question. Well, I liked all of them. I thought Minnie Driver was really good.
She's really good. I thought her and Isabella Rossellini were both very good.
I don't know what movie I would want to see her in. I mean, I've seen Good Will Hunting, if that's anything, but...
Yeah. That's a good movie that Minnie Driver's in. Yeah, I would watch. I'm curious about Mark Anthony's character since he is just like that fly in the wall. Like, what's his home life like? What is he going home to? Is he Puerto Rican also assimilating during this time? Would have been nice to get a little, although it is a strong choice for him to not really have a ton of dialogue into.
Yeah. And it really felt like a choice where sometimes I feel like they put characters like that in just to like have a character like that in and you're like, there's no emotional life, there's no real, where I would be like, Cristiano was another lead in the movie, was so present and so important to the whole thing. So yeah, it'd be interesting to know more about Cristiano. I think I kind of liked Pascal's. Like, I know Pascal's was shitty, but I'm just like, what's Pascal's origin story? They have him like lighting that man on fire at some point, and it's never fully addressed. Like, there's just a lot of fun there to be had. Also, we didn't even mention that Liev Schreiber, it's like, has like a cameo.
What?
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah, I told you about it. I told you he was in the movie.
Oh,
He's the
that's right.
doorman. The doorman.
He's like the doorman, like
shit.
enforcer. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he's huge. That's right. I forgot.
Arguably has one of the biggest careers out of this movie.
That's fucking Ray Donovan, one of my dad's favorites.
Yeah.
Wonderful series. Wonderful series.
He could be Ray Donovan, like in this cameo, like he's doing the same thing.
This is the beginning of Ray Donovan, although I guess he would be much older at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pascal's origin story would be good. Like, how did he come over with integrity and then slowly lose it? You know, what was that arc like?
He probably was that way when he was in Italy, I would think.
Yeah, probably.
And it's not a character, but I do think, I'm sure this has been done. But I think a stage production, maybe not a stage production, but this would be great as a stage production, but then everybody's invited to the big night and you just like eat the food.
Wow.
So that sequence, like the dinner table sequence, like you're just having the meal.
The other thing that was strange on that dinner table, they weren't sitting together. The husband and the barber and his wife wasn't sitting together.
Yeah.
It was strange. Gabriella and Ian Holm weren't sitting together.
Well, I got the feeling that she didn't actually like him very much. She's like, this is just my fucking boss, you know?
They came together.
Yeah. Yeah. That they weren't seated together. I kind of liked it. It felt like very like, yeah. I mean, but they were all getting up dance. I mean, there's so much happening. It was such a party.
Well, that's it, Dad. This,
All right, great.
Well, yeah. Well, no, you're not going right now. Hang on a second. Okay, I'll tell you, and don't hang up your phone before I tell you to. Okay, all right. John, you can keep this in. So the last thing we like to ask our guests, Dad, is usually we ask, what do you do in your everyday life to practice your anti-capitalist values? I know you're not an anti-capitalist, so I'm going to ask you.
You could. I'll answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah, look for deals. I look for deals, yeah. I see something in the supermarket that's too expensive, I throw it on the floor.
That's actually pretty anti-capitalist of you. That's pretty
Yeah,
great.
I like hammering people, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I have it to an art form, yeah.
That is true. I have seen my dad break people via negotiations before.
Well, you did offer Tom. You were like, we could do some cooking lessons, but I might need some get the deal lessons. That sounds like a really important skill to have.
Well, stealing stuff every once in a while is not a bad idea.
Yep, that's very good.
We're with you too. Yeah.
Yep, especially from big box stores.
Oh,
they can afford to lose it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. One thing
I'd say that's actually one of our pretty most anti-capitalist.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I will leave on this note a story that has always stuck with me, Dad, about you when you were starting out, or maybe when you were starting out, but when you would get produce deliveries and you would get like a crate of tomatoes and one or two of the tomatoes were either bruised or moldy or whatever, you would call up your produce guy and say,
half of it was bad.
Yeah, half of it was bad, or it's like I need a refund for whatever the price of 2 tomatoes is. You owe me $1.20 or whatever, 80 cents or whatever. And after doing that enough time, they were like, "Fuck, we can never send this guy any mold. He's such a pain in the ass."
I had a friend of mine, a wholesaler. My friend Jimmy had a company, produce and groceries. He used
is this
to
Jimmy
call
DiBartolo?
He used to call me the Clipper. I said, why are you calling me the Clipper? Joe DiMaggio was the Clipper.
Amazing.
He said, because you clip all the bills. I used to get every bill. If I didn't like the price, I would cross it out and put another one. And shortchange you. I used to drive the bookkeeping departments crazy. Crazy. I used to... But the bill was never what I paid. I always paid less.
This is pretty radical, honestly. Just pay different amounts, it turns out. You can just get away with that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dad, thank you so much for being here and doing this.
Picking this movie. Yeah.
And picking this movie.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
I have another movie in mind.
That's right. He did float 2 ideas, and we went with this one. So we'll have you back, I think, around Christmas time.
Okay, yep.
All right. Love you, Dad.
All right, good night. Have a great weekend. Be safe.
Thank you.
To get ourselves a treat.
Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And if you want to support the show and get access to our Patreon episodes, the link is in the episode description in your podcast player or at mvcpod.com.
Also, a reminder that we donate our ad space, so if you're part of a leftist or progressive organization and you would like to run an ad on this program, please email us at moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
For next week, we will be watching the 2024 horror fantasy trans allegory, I Saw the TV Glow.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.